Hey, what's going on, YouTube? 118 Set Shadow here. So, I'm back with yet another Market Watch, covering a few different things, including the sneak preview for Set 7, and also going over the results of the BCSs that happened over the weekend, this time in Singapore and New York. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting with Set 7. Just wanted to take a look at some of the pre-sale prices that have been going. And I can already see that we finally have some of the FFRs listed, which it looks like Tempest was already bought out at the oh, jeez, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Someone bought 3 copies of the FFR for 300 apiece. That's almost $1,000 when you include taxes. Then you've got Jewel Dragon, Drajeweled, which there's one listing that sold for this one at 170. And then after that, we've got listings at 200, so we'll see where that goes. Let's take a look at what some of these other ones are. Rockaghoul, oh geez, 125. Tempest is kind of as expected at 30. We're going to go over that a bit more later. What else have we got here? Resonance Dragon, and then Carbray. This is one of the newer Cater Sanctuary staples, or I guess generics you can play in the deck now. Wayward Therapy Angel is also a generic you can play. And these cards are likely to see a lot more play with other Cater decks as time goes along. We've got the New World Origin Overtrigger, which is for Dark States at 10. The FR for Falcate Performer. The regular double R of Witch of Accumulation Sequanas at almost $10. Why is Welstra at 11? Well, let's go ahead and just stick with that as for what we've seen on the front page. And now I just want to kind of get into what to expect with Set 7 coming. So, probably the biggest anticipated card of this entire set is Revelform Tempest, which is now at $35, and yes, it's selling for $35 right now. We're still on pre-orders, so there is the potential for this to go down a bit more, maybe to $30, but it did start at $30 and got bought out, so we will see what happens there. Not much to say about that one. And then you've got Drajeweled, who is starting out also around the $30 mark, but it hasn't gained the traction that Tempest has gotten and has dropped a little bit to 28. This card is probably not going to see as much play as you would think, so I would imagine this one may go down more significantly than most others. Then you've got Bar Virena, the new support card for Nirvana Jiva, which is also another crossover dress tech option. You don't necessarily have to play this one, but getting the ability to perform additional drive checks while also retiring your opponent's board is a pretty nice effect to have. I'd say the only downside is that it's just not as powerful as Braum Nirvana, which is far more of a pressure hit. And then I have to talk about this card because, I'm sorry, this one is already starting at the $10 level. It has a listed median of 18 right now, but Welstra is not going to hold this value. I can tell you now, I'm certain this will not hold its value. Welstra is a pretty cool deck, and if you watched the anime and saw this in play, you might be thinking, hey, I gotta play this. This looks awesome. And to be fair, I feel the same way, and I do want to pick this up myself. But not at this price point. I would rather wait until this falls to $3, but in my case, I would probably be a little greedy and say you could probably pick this up just over $1 each, so maybe a $4 playset. Anyway, $10 is too much of an ask for this, even as a pre-sale, but it is a pre-sale, so it's not surprising people would buy into it at this point. But once the set comes out, this is probably going to have an enormous amount of listings on the market. That's a wrap for the sneak preview. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, I want to get back to a subject I covered before, triggers. In particular, I want to cover common triggers, particularly set 1. So, there's something about set 1's triggers, the crits and the heals, where I think you guys can see already. Look at these market prices. We've got 341 for Barbizon, which I may have talked about before. Then we have Nobilium, which is also almost $2 at a market price. LG Pixie is a dollar market price. Disma is a dollar market price. Look at this. Almost all of these crit and heal triggers have a market price close to $1 or above $1, except for Abyss Temptation and Conduct Spark. Conduct Spark makes sense because this was reprinted in the Balsagra deck. Abyss Temptation, it's got a ton of listings for one, but you can sell this above 50 cents, and it will sell. I myself have been able to sell a few playsets of these around the 60-cent range, so it's not too surprising. But then take a look at set 6. Now, mind you, all of those triggers I pointed out from set 1 are vanilla. They're just 5k vanilla triggers, crit and heal. No shield differences, nothing. But look at the difference. 30-cent market prices. All across the board. Keep in mind that all of these triggers are exactly the same as these triggers with the exception of what card they are. I have talked about how Cardinal might become a sub-archetype in the game going forward. We already have Monster as a sub-archetype now. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that stuff like Cardinal might actually become a sub-archetype, which gives these two some reason to actually increase in value. But stuff like LG Pixie and Disma, they don't have the same likelihood of that, especially not something like Flinty Slasher. And yet, even with all that considered, people are still willing to pay more for the set 1 triggers than they are the set 6 triggers. And set 6 is going to get a reprint next year in March, I think, which should keep these prices as low as they are, if not even lower. It's just baffling to see that for basic triggers, there's such a value discrepancy when it comes to set 1 and 6. And I'll mention, set 1 and set 6 are the only core sets in the game where you can get vanilla triggers. Every other set either doesn't have their own vanilla triggers or they use effect triggers. But just some food for thought, when you're buying triggers for this game, be careful about buying ones from set 1 because if you need them cheaper, you're better off just buying these versions instead. Now, another topic to cover would be the decks that were topping over this weekend for Singapore and New York. And the big spotlight for both of them is the EVA ride line. So EVA took 4 slots in New York, and it took 2 slots in Singapore's top 8. And it also won New York while also getting 3rd place, so it took 2 of the top 4 slots as well. And EVA did take 1 slot in the top 4 for Singapore, but it didn't win that one. Lutetia ended up winning Singapore. But despite the really strong showing of EVA, the price has dropped a lot. This card was sitting around $10 after its initial price bump, which got people to sell it for around $15 for like 3 days tops. But now the card is all the way back down to the $5 mark. So it's getting more accessible, and a lot of the other cards that play in the deck are also getting slightly cheaper as we go along. Like Obscured is now $8, and then Experiment Successful is also $8. And our promo order, as I mentioned before, has been dropping towards the $25 mark for the common. The deck is starting to get more affordable, and as we get into a change in format with set 7, people are likely offloading on EVA just to get into stuff like Youthberg or Bejeweled now, or even some other stuff. But a dark horse that has been showing up in the tops for these tournaments has been Greedon. Both Singapore and New York had one Greedon in the top 8, which in both cases also ended up in the top 4. But this card is really cheap to pick up right now. You can still find a good amount of copies for $3 or under, and there's one person selling a playset for $150 a piece, which is pretty good. The SP is also not too expensive. It's currently, looks like we've got, essentially $15, a little bit lower. There are lots of listings for this one, 15 in total, which is not too bad for an SP. It's not really bought out at this point with 15 listings, so it's still not a bad pickup. But Greedon is showing competitive prowess, so definitely keep an eye out for it, and there is new support with set 7 that could be played with it. Then another showing, but I believe this was only in New York. Mahir Nirvana ended up getting second place at New York. Taking a look at this card has a ton of different prints between the SSRs, the different DSRs, the SP, and of course the triple rare. But the triple rare is underneath $10. It's been sitting at $10 for a while, and it's been on a downtrend for quite some time. So I'm not sure how much lower it will get. This is a set 4 card. But the thing is, with all these different printings, and the fact that the DSR is only $54, some players might actually just be forsaking the triple rare just to go for some of the higher rarities for the bling aspect. So this one is at an odd boat where a lot of other cards will share this same issue where even if you want to somehow get value out of the low end, the thing is the low end is intended to be the low end. It's supposed to be accessible. When it has so many variants that are higher end than it, it's not likely to maintain a high value. And then another card that topped and then also won in Singapore, Lutetia. This card is currently sitting around $10, $11, which has been its price point for a little while. It spiked to $15 for a brief time, but ended up getting back to this point. It's a strong deck, effectively another re-standing Vanguard based strategy. And yeah, $10 I'd say is a pretty stable price point to buy this at. I'm not sure if this can get much lower, given that even with changing formats, Lutetia is one of those decks that will probably continue to see play for quite a while, given how strong it is. Then, kind of talking a bit more on the lyrical Monastery support, let's go back to Baratoy's the draw trigger with the shield effect. So, unfortunately, it looks like players have been biting the $16 to $17 mark on this, and it's been going for the last week or so. So it's unfortunate to say, but the $16 price point might actually be the norm for a while, especially when you consider that there is no reprint slated for any of the lyrical triggers yet, which is a massive problem. If this card does get a reprint announced, this card will fall out fast, but the longer it goes without a reprint announced, the more likely its price is likely to stay up there. And finally, I wanted to talk about Yuika, which is still falling down a little bit in value. It's now at the $25 mark, so since it's starting to test at this point with some lower listings that are currently just like $1 and a few cents less, this card, if it starts to really get down to the $20 mark, that may be where it stays. Because I know this card is played in Lutetia, and as long as Lutetia remains popular, this card will also be seen with a lot of play. So $20 might be a good price point to buy into this card. $25, if you really need it, maybe you can just pick it up now. You never know with this one, because I know in Japan, the value of this one went all the way back up to like 4,000 yen. So it's hard to say what will happen with the English format. Thanks for watching today's Market Watch. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks, guys.